Aoben, Ryobi. We're going to do comparison tests today. Nothing too technical, just have a little bit of fun with this. We're going to basically do performance tests, which is power, speed, and battery life. And we're going to see if this is any good for the person like me who's the do-it-yourselfer. Alright, so for the first performance test, we're going to test the power. This Ryobi is rated at 30 foot-pounds and 230 RPM. The Aoben is rated at 40 foot-pounds and 280 RPM. There's a difference between breakaway torque and tightening torque. We're not going to get into those details. Again, just have some fun with this. We're going to see whether I can break free some bolts that are tightened to 15, 20, 25, 30 foot-pounds. And then we're going to do a comparison where we're comparing whether this ratchet can take off a bolt that's tightened by this one and vice versa. I've set the torque wrench to 30 foot-pounds and I'm going to tighten them both up. So here's the Ryobi. Good. 30 foot-pounds, no problem. Sorry, 15 foot-pounds, no problem. And the Aoben, well, it looks like it's getting stuck on the 15 foot-pounds. Doesn't seem to be breaking it free at all. Okay, so I'm not going to overdo it with this. So let's try with 20 foot-pounds, just to see if the Ryobi can do it. You know what? I'm gonna tighten this one to 20, because I want to know if the Ryobi can do this one that the Aoben could not. And it does it. Had no problem actually removing it. That was 20 foot-pounds. Just because the Ryobi seems to be doing well, we're going to do one more test. We're going to crank it up to, let's say, 27. I know it's rated for 30. Realistically, I don't expect it to actually break free bolts that are over 25 foot-pounds. You know what, I'm going to tighten them both up, because just for fun, I'm going to give the Aoben one more chance. Alright, Ryobi at 27 foot-pounds. You know, it wants to, but it's not quite going to do it. And that's okay. Cordless ratchets, they're not made to go and break free stuck bolts. They're really just to make your life easier and remove bolts and nuts a little bit faster. Yeah, there's no way. So 27 foot-pounds, not a chance. This did cover it at the 15 and the 20 foot-pounds. You know, good enough for me for day-to-day usage. For this next test, what we're going to do is we're going to tighten each of those nuts with the Aoben and see if we can remove it with the Ryobi and vice versa. Tightening it up here with the Aoben. And we're going to loosen it up with the Ryobi. Yep. Was able to do one of them, but not the other. For the other test, we're going to tighten it up with the Ryobi, see if we can loosen it up with the Aoben. Okay, loosening it with the Aoben. Okay, loosening with the Aoben. Okay, so it looks like each of them was able to loosen one of the nuts that was tightened on by the other. And again, this is just kind of a fun comparison. This is not a highly technical comparison. I'm not going to go into all the details. And quite frankly, I'm always carrying around a breaker bar with me anyway. So my point is I'm going to loosen it with a breaker bar and then I'm going to use this to speed up the job. When you're working on nuts and bolts that are, say, on the interior or don't have a lot of foot-pound torque on them, these things are great. I mean, they're going to remove bolts and nuts way faster than you can ratchet, you know, 1/8 of a turn at a time. It's much easier on your hands. But that was just a quick fun comparison to see if I tightened it with this one, would it loosen with that one? If I tightened it with this one, would I loosen it with that one? So the next test we're going to do is a speed test. We're going to time how long it takes each of these cordless ratchets to remove these two nuts. And then we're also going to use these to remove 4 of our nuts from the air intake, and then we're going to add those times together. So we're going to see how long it takes. Is the Aoben actually 280 RPM and the Ryobi at 230? It sounds like the Aoben's got a bit of an advantage when it comes to speed. And we're going to find out if that's true or not. Okay, so I've hand tightened both of these nuts, and we're going to time how long it takes to remove them. Go. All right, 7.9 seconds. And now for the Aoben. Go. .05. Okay, we're going to time how long it takes us to remove 4 bolts from the air intake. Go. All right, 21.4 seconds. And now it's time for the Aoben. Go. Exactly 21.4 seconds as well. So we're going to weigh each of these ratchets and see what they come in at. So first the Aoben with a battery, 2 pounds and 0.5 ounces. The Ryobi, 3 pounds, 2.6 ounces. The Ryobi is a pound heavier than the Aoben, and a pound overall doesn't seem like that much, but when you're working on this, you're using this day to day, you're under vehicles, you're holding it up above your head, that will make a difference as the day goes on. The edge goes into the Aoben being a little bit lighter, easier to carry around and use each day. So with the Ryobi being about a pound heavier, I've got a 1.5 amp hour battery on here, which is great. You really don't want to go much higher than that. If you're going to do work around the shop, just have multiple 1.5 amp hour batteries and they're going to last you all day. You don't want to put a 4 or a 5 amp hour, certainly not a 9. For the trade-off in weight, it's going to be uncomfortable. It is just not worth lugging around the mechanic shop or even through your garage. The Aoben uses a standard 12 volt, just like a Milwaukee or anything else, 2 amp hour battery, and that's really ideal for this work. You don't need a lot of power, and I don't find that the 18 volt battery itself provides significantly more power than a 12 volt from a cordless ratchet perspective. The Ryobi stuck with the 18 volt 1 Plus battery, obviously for compatibility. That's awesome. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Ryobi tools, and I love that they use these 18 volt batteries for pretty much everything, over 100 tools. I do like that the build quality of this Ryobi is solid. It feels great. It's not huge here. This collar allows you to move it around. And so oftentimes I actually find myself holding it this way because it weighs 3 pounds. It's actually easier to hold it this way and then press the trigger and you've got some control over it, versus when you hold it this way, the weight of it is always kind of pushing on the paddle a bit. And so I find a lot of times actually holding it this way, reversing the collar so it is used this way, is actually a huge benefit. So kudos to Ryobi on that locking collar. It does make a big difference. But also at the end of the day, that's the trade-off, right? Being able to use this battery with all the tools that Ryobi has is a bit of a problem here when you're trying to access certain areas. You've always got this battery sticking out. It's always going to be there. I think it would be great if Ryobi actually came out with a 12-volt slimmer battery option. I know it goes away from the OnePlus tools, but in comparison to the Aoben, the Milwaukee, the Makita, like they're all 12 volts, and they do just fine. You know, the form factor is much easier to work with on a day-to-day basis than the Ryobi, just because of that battery. The build quality of the Ryobi is awesome. This whole area is great. It's solid quality, like it feels great. You can just tell it's well built. There's nothing loose shaking on it. The lock button is very, very firm, so you have to be very deliberate when you're locking and unlocking. The Aoben, it doesn't have the build quality as a Ryobi or a Milwaukee or anything like that. Not that it's falling apart in your hands or anything, but one, this little switch is just kind of tucked away where it's not that easy to access, but plus when you're holding the tool, your finger tends to hit it a lot. And so oftentimes I'm going to accidentally lock it, and then I have to go and kind of play with it to be able to unlock it. Secondly, you'll notice the heads on these. The Ryobi is actually, you'll notice the heads up, the Ryobi is actually a little bit thinner. Not sure if you can see that. It's a little bit thinner. You know, in order to do that, the forward-reverse switch is flush with the head. It doesn't stick out, which makes it a bit tough to be able to turn sometimes, especially if you've got big bear paws or you've got gloves on, versus the Aoben. I like that they have the switch here, is it sticks out that way. It's really easy to turn, whether you have gloves or not. If your hands are oily or greasy, it's still pretty easy to turn. So I do like that it has that. Overall, it feels pretty good. It's grippy here. It's just like the Ryobi. They're both grippy here, so they're fairly easy to use. They're comfortable. There's a bit of a different feel to the plastic. The Ryobi feels just a little bit better quality, but you're not sitting there admiring the plastic all day long. One more thing that I'm going to mention here is that the spring itself on the detent ball here is stronger on the Ryobi than it is on the Aoben. So why does that matter? Well, what I'm going to tell you is the Aoben comes with some parts. It comes with some sockets, extensions. So this is what it came with. They're not great quality. They don't have grooves inside. And so they kind of rely on the pressure here to keep the socket in place. I'll give you an example of why I would not use the Aoben socket and extensions that are coming with the package. So here you go. Watch. Right, it falls off. You put it on the Ryobi, it's solid. It's not going anywhere. So now, if you use other sockets that have the grooves inside, you're going to be just fine. So there's one of my Husky bits with the Ryobi. Same bit with the Aoben. It's okay this time because it has the grooves inside. So again, I suggest not using the socket extension and the sockets that came with the Aoben because you run the risk of dropping some of these socket extensions and sockets on your head if you're underneath a vehicle, and it's really going to slide off that Aoben drive. So keep that in mind. If you're using either of these tools with good quality sockets and they've got the grooves inside for the detent ball to be able to latch onto, you're going to be just fine. Okay, so that was part one of our comparison between the Aoben Cordless Ratchet and the Ryobi. So let's do a quick recap here. So the first one was power. I'd have to say I'd give the edge to the Ryobi slightly on power, the Aoben being unable to crack open some of those nuts. For the speed, I'd also give the edge to Ryobi. It seemed to be a little bit faster on the nut removal test, albeit just by a tiny bit. I was surprised that the Aoben actually wasn't more powerful and wasn't faster because it's rated, again, 40 foot-pounds, 280 RPM, 30 foot-pounds, 230 RPM. So a bit of a surprise there. The third one there is the battery life. So I'd say it's a tie. I wasn't going to push it too much. I didn't want them to overheat. They were warm. I don't think they were going to burn out. But again, you don't run your cordless ratchet like a drill. It's not running for 20 minutes at a time. It gets a break very regularly. So the fact that they can both run for 20 minutes I was pretty happy with as a DIYer. The fourth comparison was the weight. Just over 3 pounds, just over 2 pounds, actually almost 2 pounds exactly. Aoben definitely has the advantage there, being lighter, easier to kind of use over the weekend, throughout the week, every day. And then lastly, the form factor, I'd have to give the edge to the Aoben. It's a little bit more narrow, easier to carry around, access certain places within the engine, interior, so forth. You don't have this thing sticking out. I definitely give the edge to the Aoben. With the Ryobi, what you get for $100 Canadian, you get this tool, the extension, and that's it. They're expecting that you have your own batteries, and then you're going to get your own sockets, etc., etc. For $126, you get this Aoben cordless ratchet. You get two 12-volt, 2-amp-hour batteries, plus a charger, and you get an assortment, I think about 7 sockets and an extension and a 3/8 to 1/4 inch adapter. Quite frankly, I'm not going to use any of those sockets, but the fact that this comes with the tool, a couple of batteries, and a charger for $126, you know, I think that's pretty appealing to the DIYer. So what's the verdict? Would I buy these to use in and around the shop? Well, looks like I have. And I'm rooting for these tools for different reasons. I really like the form factor. It's a bit of an underdog because it is not a huge name like a Milwaukee. Then again, Ryobi's a bit of an underdog as well compared to any of those pro brand name tools. I think either of these so far is going to be a good purchase. I'm looking forward to using both of these tools and to find out how well they're going to perform. In and around the $100 to $125 range. You know, I'm not looking to spend $500 or $600, not even $300 on a tool. So let's see if these are going to be good enough. So for part 2, that's going to be all about usability. I'm going to be using them on the car, in the truck, in the shop over the next 3 months. And you'll see what's life like with each of these tools in a variety of workshop conditions. So stay tuned for that.